What would possess a man to live in a graveyard? And not a nice graveyard like we have now, with hedges and trees and plastic flowers and places to water your dog. An old graveyard, first century graveyard. Yes, up on a hillside, yes, looking out over the Sea of Galilee, but a graveyard made of caves, dirt on the floor, and corpses inside. What would compel a man to live in the tombs? What would leadeth him beside still bodies? What would drive a man to hide away from his community, to live among the dead? What would cause a man to scream every night? How does someone become that tormented? People in the city, they had their theories. They also had their complaints. This tormented man, he became that issue, that issue that comes up at every single meeting. He became that issue that came up at every town meeting without fail. Excuse me, councillor, he's keeping us up at night. Excuse me, councillor, he's scaring our children. Excuse me, councillor, he's defecating on the footpath. Excuse me, councillor, did you see he's not wearing any clothes anymore? It's indecent. Excuse me, councillor, do you remember Bob's goat? Do you remember Bob's goat and how there was that infernal bleating that kept us up day and night? This man's screaming is worse than Bob's goat. And I never thought anything was going to be worse than Bob's goat. Excuse me, councillor, did you see that whatever is tormenting him is causing him now to scratch himself, cut himself with stones? Cut himself with stones. I wish I knew the name of this man so that I could preach it and say how sorry I am that this happened to him. Something had to be done about the tormented man. They had to try to do something to fix the tormented man. So they sent their medicine man to try to give him medicine. That medicine man couldn't even open the tormented man's mouth. They sent the tailor to try to make him some clothes to cover up his indecency. The tailor got bit and scratched. When he came back, he said it was like trying to dress a feral cat. They sent the rope maker to try to tie a rope around him and drag him back to the city. Somehow the tormented man chewed through those ropes. They sent the blacksmith to put his hands and feet in chains. They thought it worked, but in the middle of the night, he got free. They sent the blacksmith again with bigger chains. He broke them too. The blacksmith made a chain 4 times as thick as the chain on the city jail. He shook those chains off like a leaf. How are they going to fix the tormented man? They even sent Big Tiberius. Big Tiberius was the strongest man in the whole Decapolis. One time, Big Tiberius won tug of war against the 9 other strongest men in the whole Decapolis. Once Big Tiberius lifted a tree from a house. Big Tiberius barreled up that hillside toward that cemetery, and he took on the tormented man. He got him in a headlock. And then the tormented man stood up and pushed Big Tiberius from here to there. When Big Tiberius went home to his family, his kids said, "Papa, are you sad you're not the strongest man in the city anymore?" That night, Big Tiberius said to his wife, I'm not sad that I'm not the strongest man. I'm sad because when I held that rank, scrawny, bloody, cut up body, I mean, running my hands over his arms was like running my hands over hundreds of fish gills. I'm sad because when I held that man, I saw something about that man that is also something about me.
All right.
Do I need an exorcism too? And what about you? I know you. Don't you sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm not talking anymore about Bob's goat. Don't you sometimes have native thoughts that just won't quit? Don't you have something in your past that haunts you? Don't you have grief? And we call this man the tormented man. Aren't we tormented too? And if there is no one in this God-forsaken city who can do anything to free this man from what torments him, who is going to free us from what torments us? And then one morning, when the sun was just bursting over the horizon, voices rang out over the Sea of Galilee. Heave ho, heave ho, heave ho. For the last time, Peter, I am not going to lend you my socks. They are my special socks. But Andrew, I am so much wetter than you. You were shielded by the sail, but look at how wet I am. My shoes are wet, my socks are wet, my undergarments are wet, even my armpits are wet. Peter, that's not from the storm, that's called sweat. What would you know about sweat, John? Keep rowing. Heave ho, heave ho. And then with a great thud, a wooden Galilean boat butted up against the shore. And out of it emerged 12 wet rags of men that looked like they just escaped death, and they had, and one very well-rested rabbi named Jesus. The pig farmers who were grazing their pigs up on the hillside that morning looked down and said to one another, "He must not be from around here." Because Jesus got out of that boat and he scrambled hand over fist directly up that hillside, directly to the graveyard where the tormented man lived. When Jesus was still a long way off, the tormented man came screaming out of the cave, and he fell on his knees before Jesus. "That's funny," said the pig farmers. "He's never done anything like that before." And Jesus didn't try to give him medicine. And he didn't put a rope around his neck. And he didn't take that opportunity to put him in chains. Jesus put his two hands on the man's shoulders. And he looked down at his face. And he said, "Come out of him, you impure spirit." "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" The tormented man was opening his mouth, and out of it, a demon was speaking. "Come out of him, you impure spirit. By the power of God, do not torment me." "Come out of him, you impure spirit. What is your name?" Jesus said. "My name is Legion, for we are many." "Okay then. Come out of him, you impure spirits." "No, we don't want to." "Well, if we have to, can we stay in this graveyard? Please, can we stay in this graveyard? Can we stay in the hillside? Can we stay on the hillside, please? If we have to, can we stay on the hillside? If we have to, can we stay in this general area? area. Please let us stay in this general area. We want to stay in this general area. Could we go inside those pigs? Jesus turns and looks at the pigs. And he looks at the tormented man. And he says, okay, go inside those pigs. Suddenly, a great noise. Everyone turns to look. It's like thousands of pots being beaten. It's like chairs being scraped along the ground. It's oinking. A great cacophony of pig noises. Oink, 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 oink. It's like hundreds of bells being tolled. And then the hooves start drumming. It's a pig stampede. The pigs are running toward the graveyard. The pigs are running through the graveyard, knocking rocks here and there. The pigs are running toward the hillside. The pigs are running down the hillside, slipping and sliding and bumping and rolling over one another. The pigs are running toward the Sea of Galilee. And all the while, Jesus has his hands on this man's shoulders and begins to lift him up. At first, 10 pigs run directly into the sea, and then 20 pigs, and then 50 pigs, and Jesus continues to raise this man by his shoulders, and then 100 pigs. Pigs are piggybacking one another, drowning one another in the Sea of Galilee. Jesus lifts this man to standing now. And a whole population of pigs, plenty of pigs, a plethora of pigs, preponderance of pigs, pigs pinballing and ping-ponging one another, pushing one another, pelting themselves over the pier. 2,000 pigs. And when they were all done, when the last of the pigs had poured itself into the sea, the air was quiet. The air smelled good. There was an old man, hundreds of years later, who said of this moment when 2,000 demons entered 2,000 pigs, that the disciples saw in that moment what John on the Isle of Patmos saw. That Jesus is a great broom, and he has come to sweep the earth of all its filth, of all that is wicked, of all sickness and death, of everything that hurts us. Jesus has that power. Jesus alone has the power to do that. Of course, when the people in the city heard, some of them, it was irresistible. They were so curious. They came down to see what had happened. And they see the 12 disciples, and they see Jesus, and they see the tormented man, the Gerasene man. Did you know the town that he is from, that name means to cast out? And he's not screaming anymore. He's just chatting. He's not crawling on the ground. He's sitting on a bench. And he's not naked anymore. He's clothed with a hodgepodge of Galilean clothes. Andrew is very proud. He gave him his special socks. Were they amazed at what they saw? No. They were afraid. Afraid because they had tried to give that man medicine. They had tried to clothe him. They had tried to put a rope around him. They had tried to put him in chains. They had sent their strongest man. is this power? They were afraid because what is this power? Afraid because who are you? Afraid because who are you? And a couple of people in the crowd begin to cry out, go on, get out of here, go on, get. Jesus doesn't resist, turns back towards the boat. He walks down that hillside, slipping and sliding in the tracks in the mud that were just made by thousands of pig hooves just moments before. As the last of the disciples was getting into the boat, the Gerasene man came running down. Jesus, Jesus, you've done so much for me. Jesus, you gave me my voice back. You gave me my mind back. You gave me a brand new life. Jesus, I have been bound to demons for so long. Now let me be bound to you. Let me come with you. And the disciples, yeah, come on in. But Jesus says, no. He says, no. Jesus says, I want you to go home. I want you to tell those people what the Lord did for you today. And then Gerasene man, seeing in Jesus' face that there will be no arguing with him, he turns back to the city. He's a little afraid to go back. But he puts one foot in front of the other, and another, and another, and soon enough he is running to the Decapolis. And the children come to the city gate and see him and they say, wasn't this a tormented man? And the Gerasene man preaches, Jesus has done so much for me. And women look out of their windows now, isn't this the tormented man? And the Gerasene man preaches to them, Jesus has had mercy, so much mercy on my soul. And the men in Gerasene put down their chisels and put down their swords. They're asking, isn't this the tormented man? And the man from Gerasene preaches to them, Jesus had power over what tormented me. And the next time Big Tiberius comes down to that city square, he sees the Gerasene man preaching. Jesus has power over what torments you. Jesus has power over what torments you. Jesus has power over what torments you. And that man's preaching was so good. It was so true that the next time Jesus turned up on that hillside, 4,000 men and women and children came running over the hillside crying out, Jesus, Jesus, we're so hungry. Will you give us something to eat? And he fed them. But that's a story for another day. For today, heave ho, those disciples are pushing back out across the Sea of Galilee. And Peter says to Andrew, did we seriously go all that way? Did we seriously go through that storm and all that way to the sea, onto the other side of the Sea of Galilee, just so Jesus could show that man that he had power over what tormented him? But that's not the whole story, Peter, is it? Because Jesus also went all the way over the Sea of Galilee to show all of them that he had power over what torments all of them. And that's not the whole story, is it? Because Jesus also went all the way over the Sea of Galilee so that you could know that Jesus has power over what torments